Namaste, Pranam, Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Mritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva manusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim. O Bhagavad Gita, with which Lord Narayana himself gave enlightenment to Partha. The ancient sage Vyasa included it in the Mahabharata. O Goddess, showerer of the nectar-like knowledge of non-dualism contained in your 18 chapters, O my affectionate mother, the destroyer of rebirth, I meditate upon thee. Krishna Vantana. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Son of Vasudeva, the slayer of Kansa and Chanur, extreme delight for Mother Devaki. O Lord Krishna, the supreme teacher of the universe, my salutations to you. Let us continue our reading of the Traya Vibhag Yoga, and Sri Krishna is so nicely explaining to us that how the three gunas, they determine our behavior, our personality, what we do, what we do not do, and how these gunas, when they are dominant at the time of our death, whichever guna is dominant at the time of our death, whichever is the thought that is uppermost in our mind at the death time, when Lord Yama is taking us, asking us to give up this physical body and get into the hereafter, depending upon our karmas, depending upon our tendencies. And Sri Krishna says that whichever is the uppermost thought in the mind, if it is a sattva, then this is what happens. If it is rajas, this is what happens. If it is tamas, this is what happens. Now, in the last shloka that we read, Sri Krishna told us about what happens when a person calls it a day. When a person dies, when the sattva is predominant in his mind, in his thinking, in his thought process, and overall he is filled with sattva at the time of death, when it is the time to give up this body, when it is time to look for another body. What happens when the sattva is dominant? And then Sri Krishna had told us in the 14th shloka that we read, Yada sattve prabuddhetu pralayaṃ jāyate deha bhrut tadottama vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate. Amalan pratipadyate. That Jivatman goes to the amalan, the spotless, the taintless, the hereafter world, which is the purest of the pure, which is amalan. There is no taint attached in that world when one goes there. And when such thing happens, yada sattve prabuddhetu pralayaṃ jāyate deha bhrut, the time when the sattva is predominant at the time of leaving this body, then that deha bhrut, that indweller, then that indweller in this body, when the sattva is predominant while he is leaving the body, while that indweller is leaving the body, then what happens? Tada uttama vidan lokan. Then this embodied one, deha bhrut, he uttama vidan lokan amalan pratipadyate. He goes to the much better, much superior, higher worlds, much superior, higher, eternal, celestial planes. That is where the Jivatman, it takes a flight to those higher worlds which are much pure, much stainless for that matter, taintless for that matter, amalan and uttama vidan. That these are the superior most, the Uttama Vidam is basically the knowers of the highest truth. And it can only happen when the sattva is predominant. That stage can only happen when the person, when the devotee, when the body which is going to be sacrificed as it is, that the indweller dwelling in that body has attained to the Uttama Vidam, the highest of the knowledge. Having attained to that highest of the knowledge, what happens is, at the time of death, it is among the three gunas, it is only the sattva which is predominant. The mind is only focused onto the lotus feet of the Lord at the time of death. No other thoughts, no thoughts of property, no thoughts of family, no thoughts of my near and dear ones, because then the near and dear one is only one, from whom this indweller has been separated. And that this indweller at one point or other has to get merged in that supreme being. That is how this journey has started. So at least now is the opportunity of, even if one is not getting directly merged with the supreme being, even if there is no liberation, at least with the good deeds, with the good thoughts, with the good devotion and knowledge, that one can have that rare fortune when the sattva is predominant at the time of death. So this was what Sri Krishna had told when sattva is predominant, sattva is over, it is at the uppermost in the mind, that those sattvic thoughts, those purest of the pure thoughts, when they are uppermost in the mind at the time of death. Now what happens when rajas and tamas are predominant? That Sri Krishna is going to tell us today in this 15th shloka. Rajasi pralayaṃ gatvā karmasaṅgiṣu jāyate tathā pralīnastamasi mūḍhayoniṣu jāyate. Very categorically, without beating around the bush, Sri Krishna is frankly telling us, this is what happens when rajas is dominant, this is what happens when tamas is dominant. Now what happens when rajasi pralayaṃ gatvā? Pralayaṃ gatvā, rajasi pralayaṃ. At the time of death, when rajas is dominant, then karmasaṅgiṣu jāyate. Karmasaṅgiṣu jāyate. Karmasaṅgiṣu is the Jivatman goes to those regions where the karma, action-oriented realms, action-oriented births, they happen. The Jivatman then finds a place, finds a womb, which is going to give birth to a karmic fellow, which is good. Because the Jivatman knows well in the beginning, okay, this is the womb which is going to get me into the family where I have to slog and slog and slog, whether I like it or not. This body has to slog and slog and slog. So when the rajas is at the dormant, is dominant at the time of death, such a Jivatman takes birth, which is going to fetch, going to get engaged in lots of activities, lot of action, lot of karma. Rajasi pralayam gatvā karmasaṅgiṣu jāyate. He is born among those who are attached in action. There is nothing but do this, do this, do this, do this. So the task-oriented lifespan, one has to then start look to take a birth in. So it is nothing but work and task. It is nothing but action. That is what happens when rajas, because rajas is associated with action. So that is what happens when the Jivatman leaves the body, when rajas is at the dominant. And what about tamas? Sri Krishna says that tathā pralīnastamasi mūḍhayoniṣu jāyate. At the time of death, Pralīnaha is at the time of death, at the time of at the end time. When tamas is dominant, then there is most unfortunate way to take birth is mūḍhayoniṣu jāyate. That Jivatman will enter a womb, which is the womb of the deluded. And taking birth from that deluded womb, the person is also going to remain deluded throughout the life, unless there is a grace of the divine, unless there is the blessing of the mother. That person in that birth is going to remain deluded under the veil of ignorance and not knowing what is right, what is wrong, not knowing what is real, what is unreal, not knowing what is good, what is bad, not knowing what is prayas, what is shreyas. That person can never get onto a spiritual path, for that matter, with that kind of a tamas dominant at the time of death in that previous body. The next body is also going to be the same rotten way of living under delusion, living under that ignorance, living in that darkness, and not knowing that, okay, that is my path. I have to become one with that imminent, with that ultimate Paramatman, that ultimate Parabrahman. So this is what now Sri Krishna says about the rajas and tamas dominant at the time of death. So meeting with death in rajas, he is born among those attached to action. So again, he has got that life where he has to put in all the efforts. Do this, do that, get into this activity, do this task, do this work. Constantly engaged in some activity or the other. And dying in tamas, he is born in the wombs of the deluded. So, Shri Krishna has said, these are the three eventualities that the Jivatman can get into for the future course, when the sattva is dominant, when the rajas is dominant, when tamas is dominant. The already mentioned sattvika man casts off the body in all calmness and in full consciousness. When a person with dominant sattva dies, he is fully conscious, she is fully conscious, and it's all calmness. There is no pain, there is no shouting, there is no crying. Oh my God, I am going. No. The sattvic person, when dies, with sattva being predominant, it is all peaceful, blissful, and one of its unique kinds of deaths. There is no trouble, there is no pain, there is no grieving as such. Cool and calm, with fully conscious. Till the last moment, these people, they are so conscious, they know what is happening. They know that now it is the time for the Jivatman to get out of this body, and their entire focus is centered only around the lotus feet of the Lord. And that's how these people, they depart from this world. Without any remorse, without any grief, without any pain. The rajasic man leaves the body with excitement, desire, and sorrow. So rajasic man, when leaves, we can see that, okay, this fellow has got so many desires in his mind at the time of death. What will happen to my property? What will happen to my family? What is going to happen this? What is going to happen to that? All the time worried about the worldly matters, about the things material. And under such circumstances, when it is time for the Jivatman to leave the body, it is extreme pain for the rajasic person. It is sorrow, it is grief. And it is not a happy moment to live. Whereas when the sattvic person dies in a moment of bliss. There is no remorse, there is no grief, there is no pain. But with rajasic, it is excitement. Because Rajasic wants to know what lies ahead, what I am going to do next in my next birth. I have so far in this life, I have done so many things. I have accumulated so many things. Now these are all going to be lost for me. Now what lies ahead for me? So that kind of excitement is there in the mind of the Rajasic person. And then all these desires also, they go with him. All these desires, they kind of lay down the future path for the next births. Desires. And finally, having come, the time has come to leave all these things behind. That sorrow is there, that grief is there, that sadness is there. Oh my God. Such a wonderful family I had, such a wonderful possessions I had. Now I have to leave all these things. I have to leave all these things behind. I am not going to take any of these material possessions with me. That remorse, that the sadness, it lingers on, and that's how the Jivatman then leaves the body looking for the womb where he is going to get an opportunity to work more and more and more. Maybe this life, if he has accumulated a property worth, say, a few crores, maybe that the intention of acquiring properties with many more crores, millions, billions, that desire will be there. And somehow the Jivatman will start looking for the womb, which is going to give an opportunity. Whether he makes it in the next birth also or not, that depends on the karmas that he has done, that person has done in the previous life. But at least that desire is there. And with that desire, the future course of births, they are planned. They take place. So when he is born again as the one given to excessive, so he is born again as the one given to excessive activities and tasks. So this is what happens with the Rajasic. The Tamasic man dies in unconscious state. Tamasic man doesn't even know that now I am dying. It all happens just like that. No, there is no awareness of the Jivatman has to leave this body and get into the next world. What kind of world that would be? There is no thought as such. And it is all passing from one phase of darkness to another phase of darkness. Such a one is born again as an animal or subhuman being, or even if as a human being. I mean, okay, it is of no use for that matter. No use for enlightenment, no use for illumination. There is no scope. Such a person dies in ignorance. Such a person has lived in ignorance and darkness, dies in ignorance and darkness, and moves forward again in same ignorance and darkness. Now a question might arise that if that is the thing, is it that this person has no way of liberation, no way of nirvana, no way of getting out of this cycle of repeated births and deaths? There is. At one point or another, in all these births, the Lord, the gracious Lord, the compassionate Lord will keep on giving opportunities. Will keep on giving opportunities for even this tamasic pravritti, this tamasic quality to get suppressed, and the sattva and rajas become dominant at some point of time. Because if a person never gets born with only one quality as such, it is not, I mean, although the tamas is predominant at the time of that death, that doesn't mean that sattva and rajas have been wiped out. No. Sattva and rajas also are there. Only thing is the tamas has overpowered them. And then during this cycle of millions of births and deaths, somewhere suddenly there is a spark and that sattva predominates. That sattva suddenly overpowers this blown tamas, this grown tamas. It gets subjugated. And that is the time when an opportunity comes for that Jivatman, for that being as it is. An opportunity comes for that being to evolve into a higher plane. And then one day, just push. There is escape from this world of life and death, birth and death. And ultimately, the Jivatman merges one with the Paramatman, with the Parabrahman. So Sri Krishna has told us here about how the Jivatman progresses when a certain quality is dominant at the time of death. With Sattva dominant, it goes to the higher planes, to the celestial planes. With Rajas dominant, the Jivatman gets next birth, with lot of activity and lot of work to do, lot of efforts to do. And then maybe a time comes when again Sattva becomes dominant. And also with the Tamas dominant, there is a journey from ignorance to ignorance. There is journey from darkness to darkness. There is journey from delusion to delusion. But somewhere the Sattva will again raise its foot. Sattva will again become dominant. And then there will be finally escape from this cycle. So this is Sri Krishna's teaching to us in the 15th shloka about the Rajas and Tamas being dominant at the time of death. What is the course, future course that the Jivatman takes? And in the next verses, Sri Krishna is going to tell us about how these different gunas, the Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, how these gunas, they bring the fruits of action that we do. They bring the culmination of our activities, how they get how they get completed, how they get over. Now, he has told us about the qualities as such. He has told us about how these qualities dominant at the time of death determine our future course of action. And now from next 16th shloka onwards, Sri Krishna is also going to tell us about how these qualities, individual Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, they fetch the fruits of actions that are done while these qualities are dominant. So that will be for our next reading. Till then, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Jai Thakur Jai Ma. Jai Swami Ji.